Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Today's video we're going to be talking about Antonio Conte, the manager of Tottenham Hotspur. However, will he be the manager of this club for much longer? That is what we're going to be asking today, because reports have started to snowball and generate over whether or not he'll make it to the end of the season or not. Of course, Antonio Conte's contract does expire at the end of this current campaign, but there were growing reports and speculation that maybe, just maybe, Tottenham are starting to rethink and reconsider their future going forward, and especially their future and relationship with Antonio Conte, that might not see him even reach the conclusion of this current campaign. Reports starting to suggest that maybe he could be sacked before the end of the campaign. I personally don't really see it happening, but we are going to be talking about it. We are going to be talking about Tottenham's season, Antonio Conte as their manager, and everything else in between. But before we go any further, I would like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always and probably greatly appreciated. But for now, let's talk about Antonio Conte and Tottenham. Look, this is always an intriguing subject to me. Tottenham are a club that I am fascinated by for most of the time comical reasons. If I am to be a bit banterous, obviously, them not winning a trophy, the majority of their fans talking like they're a massive club and everything when they haven't won anything or haven't even shown signs that they could potentially be close to winning anything, to me has always been a bit comical. I always try and be fair as possible, and that is me being a bit banterous and a bit hyperbolic and everything. But for the most part, yeah, I don't get where Tottenham fans, for the most part, get this big club energy from. Like, they've got a lot of money, for sure. They don't really use it to the full extent or full capability. They've got a fantastic new stadium. Can't argue with that. State-of-the-art stadium. But, again, if you're out there trying to promote boxing fights and gigs and seemingly turning it into a racetrack for Mario Kart, what is the point when you're not bringing any success to that stadium, to that club? They're a banter club. They're a bit of a banter club, and that's just my personal opinion on it. If I am to be properly honest, well, I was being honest anyway, but what I'm saying is if I am to be talking about it from a footballing terms, it hasn't gone to the full extent or to the full capability of this reign under Antonio Conte. I remember talking about Antonio Conte when he took over in charge of Tottenham, and I said that this was a strange appointment for me to actually comprehend. This is strange because Antonio Conte is a serial winner. He is a manager that seemingly takes teams to that next level of being title contenders or title winners. He doesn't take a team that has been faltering for so many years around about a top 4 race and turn them anything other than title contenders or title winners. Tottenham have been faltering around in that top 4 zone for years and have thrown different managers at that problem, and they haven't worked. Tottenham won the managerial lottery, in my opinion, when they managed to capture a serial winner, a top-class manager, a manager of sheer quality and sheer just winning mentality. That is exactly what Conte brings. Like, Conte is direct, he's to the point, he's not going to be here for the long term, he doesn't want to try and build anything up long term, but that's exactly what Tottenham needed. Tottenham needed to rebuild after the failings of the likes of Pochettino towards the end of his reign, and of course the horrific but very short Nuno Espirito Santo era. He was originally meant to be that manager during that Nuno era, but of course they couldn't. He couldn't reach negotiated terms with Daniel Levy. Levy then had to go crawling back to him when the Nuno thing kind of blew up in his face. After obviously interviewing every single person under the sun for that managerial role, he had to go crawling back to Antonio Conte to try and get him to be their manager and save Tottenham's season. For one reason or another that I can only assume, Levy promised him outrageous demands. Conte made demands that he promised to deliver. Conte signed for Spurs. baffling because Tottenham were having issues at that time. Tottenham needed a bit of a rebuild. Normally, Conte does come into a squad, just adds his philosophy to it, adds a couple of modifications to the squad here and there, changes a couple of things, and makes them an absolute machine. Makes them a title-winning, title-contending machine. With Tottenham, that was never really going to happen, and you could sense that right from the off. You know that Daniel Levy is untrustworthy. You know that Daniel Levy is a guy that promises a lot but doesn't really deliver on a consistent or on a full extent basis. You'll ask any Tottenham fans that, they'll tell you of promises that he's probably made and things that he's probably said that he's not really fulfilled, not really kept to a T. So to me, this was always going to be a strange decision for Conte. This was always going to be a strange decision to sign for a club like Tottenham that were obviously nothing before then. Maybe the challenge of being the guy to deliver them silverware for the first time since 2008 might have seemed a big challenge for him, and obviously could probably cement his role as being one of the best managers in world football. Maybe that was what also guided him to making that decision to become Tottenham manager. I'm not 100% sure, but obviously it hasn't quite worked out, and you can tell it wasn't going to work out. Like I say, promises unfulfilled, promises that were delivered as alternatives, demands that were made that weren't fulfilled, that weren't kept, and everything along them lines. Because transfer windows have been and gone, and yet you can see Conte wasn't happy. Tottenham fans before the season were left with a lot of hope and a lot of optimism in regards to the transfer window that had been in the summer. They thought, right, this is the first full transfer window that Conte can really get his hands on this squad and mould it into his image, bring in his own players, and you could tell that they were good players on paper, but you could tell that they were alternatives to what Conte wanted. Conte seemingly had an idea of who he wanted, and he wanted big name players, big name signings, lots of money to be spent, and lots of money were spent, but they were seemingly spent on cheaper alternatives. Richarlison for 50 million? You're telling me he didn't want Lautaro Martinez? Of course he wanted Martinez. He wanted Martinez, but Tottenham weren't willing to pay for Martinez, so they went and got Richarlison for 50 million. Richarlison, by the way, massive flop. Not even close to a great level. I've never rated him. And yet, he is still trying to find his first Premier League goal, and we're in almost close to the middle of March. Massive flop, in my opinion. Basuma looked a good signing, especially for the money that was paid. I'll give him that one, but obviously that hasn't quite panned out the way that they expected. Jed Spence coming in. Been non-existent. Conte seemingly doesn't like him, so what was the point of making that signing other than to just buy him for the sake of buying him? They went and signed another right-back in January. That has seemingly made Emerson Royal step up his game a little bit, but let's face it, the only way that Emerson Royal could go from where his current performances were before that point was up, so let's see where that goes. Lenglet on loan, I don't imagine that was probably the ideal signing for Conte either. It's just baffling to me. It's just baffling to me, them kind of signings. They look good on paper. They look like Conte could really do something with, because the one thing that I've always credited Conte for was for making average players look better. He hasn't done that so far. And again, whether that's just frustration of him not getting the kind of players he wanted, maybe being a bit out of his depth, I don't fully know to the full extent. But I can only imagine that that was obviously going to be the case. You look at the way that Tottenham have been playing this season. Again, hasn't exactly been full Conte-esque. It hasn't exactly been the Conte that we saw at Chelsea or at Inter Milan. There's been flashes here and there. There's been glimpses here and there of good performances, good results. But it seems to be in the games that you don't expect Tottenham to actually do well in, such as Manchester City or even Chelsea to an extent. them kinds of games. And then there's been one or two other games as well where Tottenham have looked good in the kind of games where you do expect them to perform well in. But it hasn't been consistent enough. The football is boring. The football is not the best. And, you know, it hasn't been great. And when you look at, obviously, predecessors of him, Pochettino didn't win anything, but at least the football was entertaining. At least the football was interesting and exciting to watch at times. With Conte, there's nothing. They're not winning trophies and they're boring to watch. It's not exactly great and not exactly looking forward to seeing Tottenham going forward. For me, it's no surprise that this has ended poorly. Obviously, there still could be a massive twist in the tail. Maybe he does want to re-sign with the club. Maybe they're going to re-sign. But it does seem that this is going to be the final swan song. This is going to be him riding off into the sunset, so to speak, in terms of his Tottenham career right now. Because I just don't think it's working out entirely. I think there's too many problems there. You see him extremely frustrated when week in, week out. Even like they'll win a game and they're amazing. They lose a game and they're terrible. They're poor. They need to all go and get a new squad in or whatever it may be. And I know it's always been difficult as well because this past month he hasn't really been there. Obviously, he's been recovering from surgery and he's not really been with the club and with the players and everything. But Tottenham's season has been poor. They are currently in the top four, which is the bare minimum that they would have expected. Like I said, Tottenham went into this season with a lot of hope and a lot of expectation riding off the back of what was a big transfer window from what they were concerned. But it hasn't panned out exactly the best because they also had Antonio Conte and they had Dejan Kulusevski, who, despite obviously being injured and helping Harry Kane out a lot, you know, can't carry it all on his own. Harry Kane obviously dragging Tottenham through with his goals. He's still scoring goals. He's still a goal-scoring machine. We know that. But even Heung-min Son, world class. But this season, nowhere near his best. Being poor. He's been stale. I don't know what's gone on with Son, but his form has dropped off the edge of a cliff. He's been very inconsistent. He's shown flashes again here and there at times, but nothing consistent, nothing great. And I think he's been a big letdown as well as having an average goalkeeper in Hugo Lloris, having a defence that has been unstable, I guess is the word you'd say. And apart from Bentancur in the midfield, a midfield that hasn't been good enough. The fact that they're fourth is slightly baffling to me, except for, obviously, like I say, Harry Kane's goals. They haven't progressed how I would have imagined they would have. I thought they would be playing better football than this. I thought they would be stronger than this. I thought the Antonio Conte winning mentality might have at least been drilled through to them to a point where they may be in contention to win a trophy. They may be in contention to start rising from top four contenders to title contenders, but that hasn't happened. And it's no surprise that obviously this has obviously reached the point now where a lot of people are beginning to speculate that he may not even see out the rest of this campaign. In my personal opinion, I think he will. I think he will see out the rest of this campaign. We've got like 12 games left to go of the season. I think he will, because I think that Tottenham will need every best shot they have of maintaining that top four space. Of course, they currently occupy it, but with the way that they're playing, the way that their results have gone inconsistently these past few months, and with obviously teams below them starting to gather a bit of momentum, Liverpool in particular seemingly gathering a little bit of momentum. Obviously, the jury's still out on whether that will be maintained or not. You'd have to fear that maybe Spurs might not get that top four spot. And I think their best chance of solidifying it would be to keep Conte for the remaining games of the season and then see from there where things lie. The only way that I see him leaving before the end of the season is if Conte walks. That will be the only way that I see it fit. And then what happens? Do you keep his assistant manager in charge to the end of the season, finding an interim manager? Does Ryan Mason come back for the rest of the campaign, as he seems to do often? And then where do you go from there? Personally, in my opinion, whether he stays to the summer or not is irrelevant, because I see him leaving anyway between now and then. And then who do you go from there? I've said it before and I'll say it again. My personal opinion is Diego Simeone comes in. I think it's think it's right that he's going to be leaving Atletico Madrid, although not confirmed. I think he will be leaving Atletico Madrid at the end of the season, and I think that he will come in and want another challenge, another job. And Tottenham represents that kind of job of being the underdog again, like he was in Spain. Atletico Madrid trying to conquer the colossus of both Real Madrid and Barcelona. He would like that kind of underdog mentality and feel to it. A team that he can sink his teeth into and mould. And I think that that's why I personally believe that Tottenham will go for someone like Simeone at the end of the season. And that's why I'm predicting it again in this video. But obviously, that's way ahead in the future. That's for another day. My personal belief is that Conte will see out the rest of this current season with Tottenham. It's a current season that is faltering. Like I say, top four is their only shot. They've already got 1 foot out of the Champions League. AC Milan probably should finish the job off this week in terms of the second leg. If they do, Tottenham crash out. And again, like I say, no FA Cup. They lost to Sheffield United. Poor result there as well in a competition that Tottenham really should have been fancying their chances of winning. And of course, with the way that the FA Cup has been set up now, you would have imagined that maybe they could have actually had a good, decent shot. If the draw had been kind to them, maybe they would have actually had a good shot at maybe winning something this season. Had, of course, they maybe taken Sheffield United a bit more tougher and a bit more... with a bit more respect rather than try and rotate and try and not go for it seemingly as much or try and take them for granted a little bit. Big opportunity missed there for the Premier League. That's all it relies on now, top four. And will they get it? If Liverpool keep up their momentum, if Tottenham's season continues to stutter in terms of results, it's all right when you can beat the Manchester Cities, which they always seem to do. It's all right when you can beat your rivals in Chelsea, but it's more about the games after that and how you follow up them kinds of games. Losing to Leicester in the embarrassing way that they did is not the way to do it. Losing to Wolves by 1-0, despite that you might have actually played well for the majority of that game. If you don't take your chances, you don't win it, it's going to fall to you and it's going to come back to hurt you. And it's exactly what happened there. For me, this whole Conte thing has been a bit of a waste of time, in my opinion, for Conte's managerial career. It's been a complete waste of time in terms of Tottenham, and now they're needing another rebuild, in my opinion, and it's going to take even more time out of their quest to try and win some sort of silverware. It's not looking good for Spurs. I've got to be honest. It's not looking particularly great for Spurs. And like I say, I think that unless he walks between now and then, I don't really see Spurs sacking him. Unless, of course, they actually do this week if they get knocked out of the Champions League. But it is going to make things very interesting to watch for Spurs in the near future. But of course, as I always say, these are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of this news that Antonio Conte might be being sacked by Tottenham before the end of the current campaign? What do you make of Antonio Conte's reign as Tottenham manager? Will it be coming to an end sooner rather than later? Will it be coming to an end when his contract expires in the summer? And who may succeed him going forward? What do you make of Tottenham's future as well? What do you make of Tottenham's season? All of that good stuff I'm sure will make for interesting comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, down below in the comments section. I can't wait to read them all. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things always and for a bit greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I'll soon speak to you all again soon in another video.